Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 18, in which Richard Clark and I interview Ben Mackey about his work-in-progress Twin Peaks Tarot. This is a Blue Rose category episode.
A blue rose?
Good. But I can't tell you about that.
Can't?
No, I can't.
But first, I'd like to introduce a new segment to the Esoterinerd podcast called TRANSFORMATIONS and Footnotes, in which, while listening to Pat Metheny's Ricochet Parts 1 and 2, I recite my father's book, Transformations. The footnotes part is any commentary I might have. Transformations by John Dan Reed, 1976. Chapter 1, verse 1. I saw the rainbow star sky, not with my earth eyes, with my brain fire, that is itself a star. Deep light spears faceting from suns and stars, and dark blue space dancing through high mountain air. I rose a light cloud of no particular shape toward the sky home, above green earth mountains, and the cities, rock frozen, flesh frozen. Suddenly it was all white light. They came from the white light to me in the white light. They messaged my lives to me, and the paths I had walked and would walk. They messaged love in rainbows, and dark music, light-shattering sky foam, like space soap. The sky was orange, then deep blue, and the mountains were beneath me. Flesh people often call them saints and devils and gods. I call them friends. They messaged voices and tastes and smells and images and worlds and words and screeching sounds and the songs of the great whales in the sea, our brothers and sisters. And now for the footnotes. Saw to see key phrase at Sagittarius, so I rended the veil and went up the path of temperance toward Tiferet. Makes sense? I think by dark blue space he means what we would call indigo, the system I came from. Rose a light cloud, a bit of a pun. Rose, the scent of roses, the rose, maybe not. I rose, as in to rise, past tense. They came from the white light to me in the white light. I like that clarification. They messaged my lives to me, and the paths I had walked and would walk might lead one to think, so there is no free will, only fate? No, I don't think so. I think that when you're in those high levels, you're beyond the level of separation. You're able to see all the Akashic records, perhaps even above the multiverses, and thus able to see various different outcomes. I remember one time when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my dad had me scry into a quartz rock, look into the future, and let him know what I saw for him. I told him in 1993 he would retire. He said, "What will I do after that?" I said, "I don't know. It's all blank. Maybe that means that it's up to you to decide." Well, he died in September of 1993. Shortly before that, I had had a dream that I found an old Casio calculator watch on the ground, but it was gold. And I thought, this is like my dad's old watch in the 80s, but gold. And I put it on. A few months later, after he passed away, my stepmom gave me his gold watch. It wasn't the old Casio, of course, but a few little magical breadcrumbs like this led me to think that maybe there was more to the story than just a lot of ash dancing around. Perhaps my dad was onto something. They messaged love and rainbows and dark music, light-shattering sky foam like space soap. That sounds to me like something that he's doing his best to put into words and experience from some other place. What I would call a psychedelic experience, though my dad never actually had a externally ingested tryptamine experience. I love this. Flesh people often call them saints and devils and gods. I call them friends. That says so much about my dad and the way that I was raised. What, is it a good spirit? Is it an evil spirit? Is it... Oh, that's my friend Bob, my friend Jim. Oh, hi, Fred. Ancient god of the Akkadians, who wreaked havoc upon history and then redeemed himself through St. Peter or something. They messaged voice and tastes and smells. The screeching sounds of the great whales in the sea are brothers and sisters. I love that. That is actually the inspiration for the humpback whale song that I've included in the signatures of all those old Gwydion videos, as well as the opening of the Gwydion's Astral Podcast, and the opening to the Coffee House and Interdimensional Odyssey. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the page where this podcast is, and start clicking that link in the upper left until you get to an option for all podcasts. And if you'd like to follow along at home with our Transformations and Footnotes segment, just go to Google and type in John, John, Dan, Dan, Reeb, R-E-I-B, and that's B as in brother, Transformations. And then, just for good measure, maybe PDF as its own separate word. And then you'll get right to it. That'll at least give you the transformations, and your brain should generate the footnotes. Our guest tonight is Ben Mackey. Ben is partway through with a Twin Peaks tarot deck, remaining fiercely loyal to the style and spirit of the original Pamela Coleman Smith deck, while at the same time very thoughtfully and interestingly bringing in the characters from Twin Peaks. And so I thought, Esoterinerd all the way, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. And as I was looking through the cards that he has so far, it occurred to me that I might need backup for this one. I'm just not a big enough nerd when it comes to the Rider-Waite deck or Twin Peaks, and so I called in the big guns. This is the gentleman who... Thanks to this man, when I first started dating Janie, and then I mentioned, well, I'm in this thing called the Golden Dawn, and she's like, oh yeah, Richard taught me the Golden Dawn tarot spread, and so I'd like to introduce my good friend Richard Clark.
Hi, I'm Richard, and the reason Edward called me in for this is because although I don't do much of it anymore, I did study the tarot pretty intensively, just on my own with books, for a few years, and I'm also a pretty big Twin Peaks fan, although, as you'll hear in the interview, I didn't actually see the ending until a couple months ago. So, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Let's get to that interview, shall we?
Let's go.
Hello?
Greetings, brother. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Hi, Edward. Nice to make your digital acquaintance.
Likewise, and this is my friend Richard.
Hi.
Hi, Richard. Nice to make your digital acquaintance as well.
Likewise.
So it's an honor to meet you. I love your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
Yeah, this is really good. I don't even know where to start. We have too many questions, actually. We have questions about each card. We have questions about the minor arcana. We were thinking it might be cool to brainstorm, and maybe even if something comes up with the three of us putting our heads together, feel free to use it. I'd say.
Yeah.
And if you want it, if you like it, and it's clear that it's very whimsical. It's not meant to be serious. Hopefully, maybe in 100 years there'll be someone taking it seriously and saying no, it means this because, but.
I find it actually kind of perverse, but in a really good way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm hoping to kind of toe that line between the perverse and whimsical, because I feel like that's so much of what the show does as well.
And loyalty to the Rider-Waite. It reminds me of Seth MacFarlane's loyalty to Star Wars when he's doing a farce and they let him get away with it. Hopefully no one's gonna send you any kind of
cease and desist anything because this is brilliant work. I think
thank
that
you.
both Twin Peaks and, U.S. Games ought to back you on this. And the only problem that I can see is that you haven't finished it, and it's so freaking popular already.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little bit nervous of how popular it's gotten without having finished it yet.
You're like, I had this idea. I'm halfway through. What do you guys think? And then the world, it's gone viral. Yeah. And I assume, and I mean, feel free to not tell me, but I assume that Bob as Bob is going to be up next.
Oh, that is 100% correct. Yeah.
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
I love Leland
initial
as
sketch
Bob.
has been done, and I'm just waiting to kind of. I'm right in the middle of finishing it, so it should be appearing on Facebook and online for the next couple days.
Awesome.
Oh, that's great.
So how did you start with this? What was first, Tarot or Twin Peaks?
So, so it originally Tarot was first. I would consider myself very much a beginner and a newbie in the world of tarot.
You can study for years and
right.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm only 24, and I've been interested in tarot probably for the last maybe year and a half or so. Only over the last couple months, starting to try to delve into it with greater veracity.
Right.
And Twin Peaks about the same way. Probably, let's see, maybe 2 years ago. I went on a couple dates with this guy, and he was like, "Oh, you got to watch this show. It's really amazing." And, I watched the first episode, and I don't know if, my brain just wasn't quite in the right place. And
Was it the pilot?
It was the pilot, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird place to start.
Yeah.
Well, that's the place to start.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but doesn't it have, a different ending? It, explains the whole thing at the end. Bob sits down and...
Only if you watch the European version.
Oh, right.
There
That's
was
what
the
it
European theatrical version
Yeah.
that had the ending tacked on.
Yeah.
So, luckily I didn't see that one, but it just kind of didn't, I guess it didn't ring true with me right at that time. And then probably about maybe a year or so ago, my ex-girlfriend, she was like, "Hey, you need to, let's get you to watch Twin Peaks." And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "Just make it through the first episode. It's kind of weird, but once you watch 3 episodes, I guarantee you'll be hooked." And that was very, very much the case.
Nice.
Yeah. And then the idea for the Twin Peaks Tarot started off pretty humbly. I for a Secret Santa gift, I had made a friend who was really into Twin Peaks and really into beer. I made him these fake Twin Peaks beer labels. So I made a Log Lady Lager, a Laura Palma Porter,
Okay.
a Red Room Red Ale. So I had done these little drawings that I glued onto these beer bottles, and my friend was like, "Oh, these are really cool. They kind of remind me of tarot." And just that little suggestion was like, "Oh,
Bing.
Right.
yeah."
Light
It was
bulb.
that little.
By the way,
light bulb went on.
R.I.P. Catherine Coulson.
Oh, right.
The log lady just passed away last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really sad. I saw her. She was one of the people who said Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like Eyes Without a Face or something like that on those when they were trying to talk him into bringing him back on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, didn't mean to
The
bring
High
everyone
Priestess.
down.
No, it's life. It's all
Yeah.
part. It's bittersweet even when it's comedy.
Mhm.
It's, let's see. Andy Brennan.
Yeah.
I was looking at these names and I was like, oh my god, I don't know all the names. I gotta have Richard on here. So I called Richard because he's a bigger nerd than I am.
Okay.
I'm just the guy making the Esoterinerd podcast. He's the big Esoterinerd.
Can I tell my Twin Peaks story?
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
It's kind
absolutely.
of interesting. Because I watched the first episode when it first aired. I mean, I was in high school. And I just got so into it. I mean, every week, it was just I was there for it and taping all the episodes and rewatching them again, trying to get clues. And then I went to college when the second season started and could still watch it, but only because one of the people in the dorm had this tiny little black and white TV, which black and white is not really the best way to watch Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
But they kept, after a while when the ratings started falling, they kept changing the time slot. And finally, they put it at a night where I had class. So I couldn't watch it, so I missed the last 3 episodes.
Oh no.
And again, this is like 1990, 1991. You know, if you miss an episode, it's gone. You can't stream it. You can't get the DVD. And it didn't seem to be showing on repeats anywhere. Finally, I think Bravo showed it, but I missed that. And then about 10 years ago, like my girlfriend at the time got the videotapes and was like, oh, well, let's watch them. And so we started watching it and broke up right before we got to the last 3 episodes. So I began to think, well, maybe I'm just not meant to see these. And then finally I rented the DVDs just a couple months ago and began to fear for my life as I was getting closer and closer to the end. But I made it through. I finally saw the endings, which meant that I could finally see the movie, which I had skipped as well. And so, yeah, nothing bad happened to me.
Well, congratulations.
25 years later, I finally saw the ending.
That's good.
Have you guys seen that book, Catching the Big Fish, by David Lynch?
No.
No,
It's kind of cool. I recommend it. And since people are listening, he goes into his process a little bit, and he kind of expounds upon how his transcendental meditation practice ties in with his creative process. And he clarifies that he doesn't get this stuff from dreams, except for that one time, you know. And one of the things that one of the stories that he tells in that book is he was shooting Twin Peaks. I think it was the pilot, and they were, you know, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, and he went outside and. After like a long day of work, I might be embellishing on it, telling my own version of it, but it's in the book. But I'll finish the story though. It was a cold day, and he put his hand on a car that was warm because the engine had been on recently, and right then he had this flash, and it was the Red Room.
Huh.
And so, you know, but he was talking about expanding the space using the transcendental meditation, sending like as if casting a net deeper into the collective unconscious, deeper into the unified field, the Akashic record. He only used the middle one, and then, you know, hence the title, Catching the Big Fish, rather than catching the ones on the surface that are funny, catching the ones that are deep down, you know, that are just so primal that people just can't come to grips with it, you know, which kind of explains a lot about Twin Peaks and David Lynch and kind of the divide between people who love David Lynch and people who really don't care for David Lynch at all. So this will be an episode that people that were into some of the other episodes will be like, yeah, I really wasn't into the Twin Peaks thing. But other people were like, oh my God, you got the guy who's doing the Twin Peaks thing.
So let's talk about the cards. You're doing them in order?
Yeah. I find that just works best for my just kind of like my working process, and it forces me to potentially work through some of the more complicated cards instead of just trying to like put them off to the side until the end. I'm like, nope, I got to do 1, 2, 3 in order. It just makes me a little bit more responsible with completing them, I think.
I can see that. Yeah.
It's kind of like I'm, going through the journey as well on the cards, which is kind of nice. Since the cards are so like purposely ordered, that it kind of is a nice chance to like fall into those cards and what they represent and kind of go along with the journey that the cards do.
Right. In the system I came from, you'd actually start with the world and work your way up to the Fool. But you're going more the Masonic route of starting up at the top of the Tree of Life and you're working your way down to Malkut. And when you finally get there,
we call that the normal way.
You'll be the president.
So what was first? Did you decide like who all of the cards were going to be and then start working on them?
Yeah. So I wrote down all the major arcana, and some of them just like came kind of like instantly. Mm-hmm. Like the Log Lady is the High Priestess. Yeah. Andy is the Fool. That one came pretty quickly. Emperor as Ben Horn was a pretty quick assignment. General Briggs as the Hierophant. There's this one scene where he's talking about his experience in the where he kind of has this vision, and you have this image of him sitting down in this chair in this like forested glen,
Right.
and he's on these big stone, like there's like pillars behind him, and he's kind of on this big stone chair, and there's something so perfectly like tarot about that I was like, okay, he has to be this card. He's just like this wise, spiritual, powerful man.
He was the one who knew he was, and the Hierophant, always refers to the secret chiefs behind him or whatever, and right. So he had the connections and the secret connections in the government that were delivering the messages from the UFOs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The UFO on that card was a stroke of brilliance, I thought.
Thank you. And yeah, so certain cards like that, there's almost just this uncanny level of connection between these characters and these cards, and some of them are a little bit more up to debate. Like I had a lot of issues deciding on Temperance.
I was actually going to ask if that was one of the more difficult ones.
It was, yeah, because I felt like the card itself, I felt like could be taken in a number of ways as to like what sort of character would be best like ascribed to it. So for a while, I had Deputy Hawk.
Okay.
And then I had Josie for a little while, and then I eventually decided on Norma because I started getting into assigning characters to the minor arcana, and it worked out better to have, kind of through the system that I was using with that, it made more sense to have Deputy Hawk included in those versus in the major arcana. So yeah, it's kind of this weird. It can be kind of complicated at times and like really indecisive. Other times it's like a natural, like, oh, of course he's the one for it or she's the one for it.
Well, as far as Temperance goes, I mean, at least in kind of a calming influence sort of way, I think Norma really is one of the sanest characters, so I think it really fits.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's kind of what it came down to, is that she has this like duality to her where it's between like Big Ed Hurley and Hank Jennings, and for the most part she does maintain this sense of like calm, and she keeps running her business, and yeah, she keeps a very level head in a world of people with not so level heads.
Right.
Balancing, reconciling the irreconcilable.
But you mentioned that Benjamin Horne was one of the ones that first jumped out at you, and I think having him as the Emperor and Catherine as the Empress, again, that was one of the things I'm thinking most of when I thought that this deck was kind of perverse.
Now, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but are we going to see the arm on the Sun card?
Oh, the armless man?
No, the arm, the little person.
Yes.
He's going to be on. I thought so. Okay. That's awesome. And he's going to be having a ball.
Yeah, so he's going to be kind of dancing there, and I think he'll be riding the white horse as depicted on the card. And I'm considering having the giant be the sun, because he provides a sort of illumination. And then the arm he'll be holding like because he has like the banner. So that'll just be kind of like a deeper red to kind of represent the red room, yeah.
Nice.
Excellent. The blue rose on the death card is brilliant.
Yeah.
I love
thank
that
you.
dark. Oh, it's creepier than the death card actually. When you put the death card up next to Leland as Bob, Bob is creepier. Yeah. It kind of like it makes me feel like it's making death unnecessarily evil.
Yeah.
But he's kind of...
that was one that I was having some kind of, I guess, like more internal like moral qualms, because I think a lot of times people do associate all these like negative connotations surrounding death, but I don't necessarily agree with that.
For the tarot, I mean, it's you got to,
Yeah. So it definitely ended up being a little bit darker than I had hoped, but I guess that was just kind of how it came out, and I feel like it kind of reflects maybe the show's attitude more of death in some ways, or at least the death surrounding the Palmer family to a certain degree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. His wife was there. What's her name?
Sarah.
Was
Sarah.
there, and the body wrapped in plastic.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Is sometimes it's like finding like the visual connections between the Twin Peaks universe and the tarot card universe. also makes some of these decisions kind of for me. It's like, oh, there's this prostrate body on the ground. I've already decided on Leland to kind of represent death. What figure in the Twin Peaks lore would kind of work to fit in here? And I was like, oh, there's like, Laura in the bag, and then you have this like, it's the family then represented on the card.
Right.
I have another guess. Laura on the star?
The star actually is one that I would be very interested in hearing what you guys have to think about. Like who would be depicted on that? Right now, I have Laura tentatively set for the world.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. No, you nailed it with that.
Yeah,
Donna would probably be a good star.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I had Donna, Lucy potentially.
Okay.
And then I was also like, when I was starting to do the minor arcana, there's that scene where Wyndham Earle talks about his 4 queens, and those are Donna, Shelley, Audrey, and Annie. So I was like, well, if I make all those the queens, there's this added significance of
them being the 4 queens.
Right.
Well, you got to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of leaning towards Lucy as the star, just for like visual association with her, being this female character.
Well, what about Audrey? Audrey's very Venusian, and the star she's supposed to be Venus, Isis, Nephthys, and Hathor.
Right. Yeah. That's too. It's like those 3 in a row. The sun, the moon, and the star are all very. They're all kind of fluid. Right now.
Audrey's one of the queens, though, right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it now. I'm caught up.
Yeah. And then I'm kind of hoping to use those queens as sort of the center for what those different the houses represent.
Mm-hmm.
For each of the. So it's a challenging, and I find very entertaining kind of process.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because it's like there's a certain amount of logic that you have to work with to kind of figure out, okay, who's going to be what, and fit people into each slot. But then you've got to have a little bit of leeway because it doesn't, like you said, some things just present themselves automatically, and other ones you're like, well, this might be a little bit iffy.
Right, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that a lot of the minor arcana would depict particular scenes or events in the plot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. That was my plan. Originally, I was going to try to get a different character for each one, but I quickly realized that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So for the kings, the queens, the knights, and the pages, those are all going to be characters still. Mm-hmm. But then getting into the rest of the minor arcana, those will be depicting scenes.
Excellent.
That's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, you were saying about how it was kind of subversive, how the emperor and empress were cheating on each other, and the lovers are cheating on each other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and Leo as the archangel is just hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that you guys found that funny because that was. To the casual assumer or to the casual viewer, there might not be that joke, but there is kind of that if you know Twin Peaks really well and if you know Terra, there is this kind of dark humor presenting itself.
Yeah.
When did you start working on these?
I started these. And I'd have to check Facebook, but it's probably been over the last 4 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a good chunk of them. I got through the Hermit in maybe a couple weeks. Wow. And then I kind of had this I had this long interim where I was working on this other comic book project, which kind of took the forefront of my artistic production. And now that's kind of been, I've met my deadlines for that, and now I'm kind of moving back into the tarot, which I'm very excited to be doing.
Very cool. So 15, if we figure 15 and 4 months to get to 78... so in about a year.
Don't scare the guy.
At this rate,
my maximum goal is to have them all done before season 3 comes out for Twin Peaks.
Oh, when's that?
Next year.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's doable. So that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Some people on the Esoterinerd podcast will be kind of up on the game a little bit because there's people that want to buy this now. They're like, who do I give my money to right now for this deck? And so I got to tell them oh, well, that'll be part of this interview is they'll hear that. They'll get the bad news that you get it on Facebook. You can print it out.
Yeah. If you do plan to sell it, just make sure you get all the right
Patents and
signatures
copyrights
because
Right, yeah.
wouldn't want to go the way of the Hello Kitty tarot.
Right.
Which, that was awesome, but
What happened with it?
Sanrio got
Oh.
angry because the guy was actually selling it.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's
I mean, if there was a way to team up, I mean, David Lynch, if you're out there, if you're listening to this, I think you should get in touch with Ben. We haven't even said your name yet. Ben.
Oh, yeah.
Ben,
yeah.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Mackey.
Ben Mackey, Mackey.
Correct.
And
yes.
we'll post a link to your Facebook on the page so that people can get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about this, if they have questions, if they want to yell at you and tell you you're doing it wrong, all that good stuff. Wow.
I don't see how anyone could see this and
No.
think you're doing it wrong. I
Well,
mean, this is about as right as I can imagine.
There was a guy in Nepal who was confused because the magician had a cherry pie, and so I told him he had to watch this TV show called Twin Peaks. And then someone else said it looked very Masonic on account of he was wearing a suit. And again, I said they had to watch Twin Peaks. And then I posted the last 5 minutes of the last episode, and then I watched it, and then I was like, oh God, what have I done? And so I posted Mr. Rogers flipping off the children in the late 60s and, as the antidote for, if you watched that, then watch this afterward and it'll be fine.
Edward Allray made some of his guesses. If I can guess, I'm assuming that the tower is going to be the mill fire.
Very correct. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to see these.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of having Josie being the one of the characters kind of falling out of the tower.
Yeah.
Or potentially maybe kind of altering the design a little bit and giving her more of a close-up portrait to kind of have her being a little bit just more present on the...
Yeah.
Josie and... I don't know, maybe Pete. Maybe Leo. Yeah. Leo was there.
Well, there's already Leo in the Lovers.
No, Leo started it. That's right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and the one of the cards I'm really excited to do is the Page of Cups, because it's a guy holding up the cup with a fish coming out of it.
Oh, okay.
The percolator.
Pete Martell, the fish and the percolator.
It was funny. It's like I think I watched the pilot episode so many times that even after a decade, I can still recite so many of those lines right along with the characters. Yeah. There was a fish in the percolator.
Are you talking about that little girl who got murdered?
Is there something wrong, young pretty girl?
Are you going to stick with pentacles, swords, cups, and wands, or is there a Twin Peaks spin on that?
So what I'm looking to do is for the cups, I'm doing cups of coffee.
Okay.
And those cards are going to kind of encompass sort of the normal everyday townfolk of Twin Peaks, people that are residents there, scenes that kind of relate to maybe the less, some of the less extreme events that happen, maybe some high school scenes, diner scenes, more scenes involving more of the normal residents.
Yeah.
Okay.
The swords are it's gonna be the Bookhouse Boys symbol. So the sword with the tree behind it. And so some of those the king I'm having as Big Ed. Okay. I'm thinking the knight will be Deputy Hawk. I think the page will kind of be I'm thinking Bobby right now, because in my head there's a certain sense that I have this prediction that Bobby in the new Twin Peaks is gonna be some sort of law officer there, and potentially someone who's carried on the Bookhouse Boys tradition. So that's kind of my own personal this is kind of what I think about the universe.
Yeah.
And then the pentacles are going to represent. Right now they're standing in as poker chips, and those are going to deal with one-eyed jacks and some of the more kind of seedy underworld dealings of Twin Peaks.
Okay.
But still very much in the mortal realm. Mm-hmm. And then the wands are going to be logs, which deal with more of the kind of the esoteric, strange,
the weird
the stuff in the woods,
the blue rose cases.
Yeah.
And so then I'll kind of that'll help me focus the minor arcana that occur in those specific suits, and kind of help me choose what the scenes will be depicting.
Could you, because I wasn't
immediately recognizing what's going on in the four corners of the Wheel of Fortune.
I wasn't sure either because I've only seen the movie once.
for our listeners who are looking at the tarot deck and maybe aren't familiar, that symbol in the middle is the blue rose symbol that is on the ring that shows up, in weird places in the movie. And that's also, I noticed that symbol in place of the P in place of the Pamela Coleman Smith signature throughout. It seems now and then. Or sometimes it's like it's in place of the infinity above the magician's head.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's in place of the signature.
Yeah, so that was kind of. So sorry, were you asking about the?
I wasn't actually. I was actually just mentioning that for the audience, but I was actually asking about the four corners, those scenes.
Oh yeah. So you said the Wheel of Fortune card.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this card is really tapping into. Fire Walk With Me more so than Twin Peaks Official, and so the four corners are like the four figures that appear in the Black Lodge in that scene. You kind of see these these men in the background that are kind of in observance. So on like the upper left, you have like the woman sitting on the side, and then the young boy who you also see in Twin Peaks. They're the ones that Donna takes the meal to, and they're talking about the creamed corn.
Right.
So,
and then I think the guy on the upper right, is he the one where he does the thing with his arm that goes up and down?
Yeah, it kind of it vibrates a lot. And so that was kind of the inspiration for those four characters. The Wheel of Fortune card was one that I was like kind of struggling with, and I'm not entirely. Like, I'm happy with it mostly, but at certain times there's parts that I'm a little bit like, I don't know if it's as strong as it could be. But that was kind of my thought behind it. And the clouds are some of that like vaporous smoke that you see, appearing in the black room. And the center ring is the ring that you see like Mike at the end. Mike's wearing it at some point, and the lightning represents the lightning that permeates the show, and kind of like how these supernatural figures from the Black Lodge, kind of like people have speculated that they travel through the lightning, or that they're that their lightning made manifest in the real world.
And Michael, the one-armed man, is wearing that ring at one point.
Right. Yeah.
When he pulls up next to Leland and Laura.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So just for those who are confused at home, Michael, the one-armed man, back when he was a Satanist, he had a tattoo, and so he cut off his arm, and that became the little person who's in the red room. And sometimes Bob controls him, and Bob's beware of Bob.
Or maybe not.
Or something. We think. Maybe.
Think, yeah.
That's the popular theory.
Yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question super well. But
well, David Lynch never really directly answers, questions like that.
Yeah. In certain times, there is with some of these translations that there is kind of just like a gut feeling or an impulse.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you don't have much else to go on because he won't answer. It's
right. Yeah.
Well, some things he says, like there's a chapter in Catching the Big Fish called The Blue Box. And the only thing written in that chapter is the words, "I have no idea what it means."
And that's something I'm kind of intrigued about, too, is the connection between the Twin Peaks universe, Fire Walk With Me, and then Lost Highway and Inland Empire.
Neither of which I've seen.
Okay, yeah, because originally Lost Highway, also Mulholland Drive is the big one, too.
Yeah.
So David Lynch has said that Lost Highway occurs in the same universe as Twin Peaks.
See, I read that quote, and I haven't found a source for it anywhere.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I just recently went to like a Lynch retrospective at a local theater, and the guy who was hosting it was talking about that. But I also haven't heard that a lot of other places too.
Yeah, it's like it's on IMDb. It's like on all of these sites that Lynch said that they're in the same universe, but I can't track down him actually saying that. I mean, I'm not saying it's not true,
right.
But I haven't found a source for it.
Yeah. So that's kind of like one of those, like, in some ways I can like see it, and like that helps me wrap my head around what's happening in Lost Highway by connecting it to the universe of Twin Peaks, because it's a more fleshed out universe. It's an odd film, which is saying a lot for it's even odd, it's for David Lynch.
And then Mulholland Drive, yeah, that was initially supposed to be about Audrey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it is. I mean, in the way that every Tennessee Williams character is about those first 4 characters in Glass Menagerie and some.
Or that Finnegan's Wake has the same 5 characters that just keep showing up under different guises and different identities.
Commedia dell'arte.
Right. Yeah, the whole idea of like interconnectedness, either like quite literally through the universe between his films, or more of just in like that archetypal sense. I'm, playing around with that idea of maybe making some nods to Mulholland Drive or Inland Empire in the card deck, just to kind of expand on that concept or that idea.
Well, there's so much stuff going on. I mean, even in the minor arcana, that, it would be pretty simple to put stuff into the background. Or because I think one of the things about the Rider-Waite that's so fascinating is just that you really can stare at them endlessly, trying to figure out, like, what's that there for, or what does this mean, or it's like a Sgt. Pepper's album cover,
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm why I'm drawing so much on the Rider-Waite version of tarot, is just that level of how much you can fall into them. I feel like really mirrors how much you can fall into the works of David Lynch.
Yeah.
And just the ubiquity of both the Rider-Waite and Twin Peaks.
And, I mean, they do both inspire a certain amount of obsession and fanaticism among people.
Yeah.
So I think, it's a really good match.
It's at the same time kind of poking a little bit of fun at that, but at the same time doing it with such a degree of precision and reverence and what's the phrase?
Respect.
Yeah. It's both. I mean, it's definitely esoterinerdy. It's
kind of it's kind of like towing the line between tribute and parody.
Yeah.
And doing both very well, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's something that is like very important in like, in these cards, and also just like in my practice as an artist too, is kind of that entering into that realm, which it's nice to hear that it's ringing true with you guys.
And it's a hard thing to do. I've tried to do it in my own writing, and it's just kind of like, it's on a really good day I could pull off something like that, but those good days don't come often.
It makes me think of how, like, musicians who will play, one song in the style of another composer or another musician. It's like, can you do Twin Peaks in the style of Pamela Coleman Smith?
Yeah, in that sound you made, kind of is kind of my going like internal orchestra for making these cards. That's kind of the sound that's always in the back of my head as I'm making these. Is like, I hope this is going okay. I'm going to put it out there in the world and see how people respond. And it's been nice getting such a response, because it helps me get a little bit more confidence that, like, there are people who are. They're kind of feeling the same thing that you are.
I think I've heard people say someone ought to make a Twin Peaks tarot at least 3 or 4 times, in the past. But this is the first time I've actually seen someone doing it. So
and there do exist some other ones out there.
Oh, okay. Really? But not Rider-Waite loyal.
No, definitely a little bit more just like branching out into other manifestations of tarot.
I'll have to check those out.
Fun. One of them is it was one of those things where I started doing it, and I was like, I better like look and see if other folks have done this,
right?
Because I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't like aping someone too exclusively. Her name's Claire Lawfer, and she's under the if you look up Twin Peaks tarot, hers are actually the ones that come up.
Oh, okay.
Like in like a lot of Google searches. And she definitely seems like she's drawing from the Rider-Waite as far as symbols go, but she's also sticking less directly to like the format and the composition of the Rider-Waite.
More like I see. Okay.
Yeah. But that was one of those things where when I was starting to do, I was like, I tried to see if they were out there. Then I tried to distance myself from those because I wanted it to be more of an authentic read of the cards in the show, not so much drawing on what other people had done before me.
Right.
And it's interesting now, like having done certain cards, I will go back and look at it and find that we've picked the same person to represent the same.
Well, yeah, there were a few that I knew, like, the arm riding on the horse is kind of a no-brainer. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
The Hellfire.
Yeah, I know what his face is going to look like, too. I mean, you haven't even drawn it yet, and I already have seen it, so...
Yeah, or, like Howard Smith or Harold Smith as the Hermit,
Right, yeah.
Which one was he? I'm a little rusty.
He was the one who couldn't leave his house.
Right. Oh, yeah.
This guy.
That's right, of course.
Yeah.
The one who had the secret diary, which also is an extra dimension to him being the Hermit.
Right, yeah.
He's actually holding on to the esoteric secret.
Right.
In the show.
Yeah, and that's why I was sure to include that on his card. He's like between
he had the book by his feet, right?
Yeah, so like in that, so her diary appears in the red card, and it also, or on the Hermit card, and it also appears on the Death card beneath the horse's feet, along with her portrait or her photo, and then half of the locket. So yeah, kind of having certain items that are important to the lore kind of appear throughout the deck as they do in the Rider-Waite. And I'm also
Jacoby hanging from the palm tree is a great one too.
So I think that's also when we talked about the world card earlier, having it be Laura, and I think some of the things surrounding her. Whereas in the card, it's it's kind of like the four evangelists, their animal symbols. I'm thinking it'll be sort of some like the four primary kind of objects that pertain to Laura during her life. So, the locket, the diary, maybe cocaine and kind of that dark, parodic attitude. But yeah, once again, that's still a little bit up in the air.
Have you read the book?
The
Secret Diary of Laura Palmer?
No, I haven't. No. I have some friends who love it, and I have some friends who both friends who like Twin Peaks a lot, some who really like the book, and some who kind of don't like to acknowledge it, even though they've read it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was really. I thought it was probably the most. Because the thing about Laura is she's such. She's not a real character in the show. I mean, she's kind of the motor that starts the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then all you get of her is everyone else's impressions of her.
Right.
Throughout it, and then I thought it was really interesting that you had her voice there, and it actually, it's not like a great book, but I think it makes her a more real person than almost anyone else in the show.
Yeah, and then have you seen like Fire Walk with Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is because I haven't read the book. Does Fire Walk with Me in the book? Do they work pretty well together?
Pretty well. There's the whole scene where there's the drug deal gone bad and Bobby shoots someone.
Yeah.
And it happens in the book, but it happens differently.
Okay.
But other than that, you can fit them pretty well together.
Okay, yeah, and I guess even that scene kind of makes sense because she was very, a little bit out of her mind,
right,
at that point. So it could conceivably be like, she
got it wrong.
Yeah,
we're looking from the point of view of objective reality.
Correct. Yeah, that's interesting that it still sounds like it could sync up very, very well, even if there are some inaccuracies.
Right. I think it fits probably better than the Dale Cooper autobiography.
Oh, okay.
fits,
Okay.
even though I think that's a really good book too. But of course, the problem is that Kyle MacLachlan only wanted a bit part in the movie. So in the book, you have him investigating Teresa Banks, whereas in the movie, you have Chris Isaak doing it.
And then, of course, there's Diane.
Right.
The Diane tapes.
Yeah.
There's got to be a tape recorder somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
Or, I'm thinking of Cooper when he first drives in and he's talking about, got to find out what kind of trees these are. Like, and then that makes me wonder, well, which Minor Arcana card was that? That moment.
Yeah. And that's something that I really now I've just done the king and queen and knight and page and ace, and I've yet to start breaking into the rest of the minor arcana. But I'm
go insane doing that, really, honestly.
Well, if you take it too seriously, like as long as I'd say if I were to presume to give advice is like to go easy, like it doesn't have to be perfect,
Sure, yeah.
Like
yeah.
if it's 80%, then it's good. People will fill it. It's like how your brain fills in the blind spot for you. They'll fill it in and it'll become perfect.
Or you could just go with the Aleister Crowley titles for each of the cards and try to figure out a scene that would exemplify what the title of the card is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, that would help add some sort of like creative constraints to the project.
Strife, the Five of Wands, where they're all beating each other up with wands. I'm trying to remember if there was a moment like that in the series.
Let's see.
There's plenty of scenes of people being beat up.
Okay, yeah, Strife. Okay.
Looking through the wands right now.
Yeah,
like
same.
the paranoid-looking guy on the Nine of Wands.
Right.
Yeah.
Five of Wands could even be like Nadine beating up Hank Jennings.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like the Three of Cups, I'm imagining being, maybe the scene that is in the video recording that is like kind of at the beginning of the they're all kind of like dancing around on the mountain, and maybe even like putting a little recording sign in the top of the card or something.
With Laura and her cousin and Donna.
Laura and Donna and James is filming it.
But yeah, James was filming it, but to make it 3, you'd have to throw in her cousin.
I'd just have James there.
Yeah, I might just like put in James or something.
Yeah, that'd work. Then it'd be consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe the video camera is down on the lower right.
Yeah, kind of in place of one of the like pumpkins or fruits.
It's not filming right now, or it's the part where after the camera was put down or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
I really admire your ambition in taking this on, and but looking at the cards you've done so far, I think this is going to be absolutely amazing. I mean, it already is amazing. So
I'm looking forward to getting a copy. I'm also curious what the back of the card is going to look like.
Ooh, yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts? I'm kind of thinking just the black and white chevron floor pattern. But yeah, I'm open to the ideas. So if you guys have any...
maybe the carpet pattern of the Red Room.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, it'd be nice if you could find a way to use like that weird sort of blue and black plaid that's on the back of the Rider-Waite deck, but like spin it in a way that maybe is reminiscent of something in Laura's room or in the house, or something maybe really subtle or maybe not. But yeah, I mean, you could always go with the zigzag pattern, and it'll be recognizable. It just might be a little jarring.
That's what I'm worried. That's a very it's very harsh. There's a very harsh quality to that.
Yeah.
And that there's that kind of that association that all the cards are tied into the Red Room.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
That's true.
I don't know if I explicitly want that.
Maybe better they're all tied into like the fabric on the dress of the waitress.
Yeah. Something a little bit more.
I'm sure Audrey wore plaid at some point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other thing I would say is I think that Audrey should show up maybe more than in just that one queen card. And if I really were to, I mean, I really think she'd be a good. Well, I don't know. There's a little bit of debate. There's a version of the star card that a friend of mine painted, and some people complained that she looked too sexy. Where the Rider-Waite one, she's nude, of course, but it's much more, about like nature, and so it's not about how hot she is. Where if it was Audrey, it seems like it would bring emphasis to how hot she is or something. Mm-hmm. So I mean, remind me who you were going to use for the star card.
Well, I was kind of considering Lucy through the act of like pouring.
Remind me who Lucy is.
She's Andy's girlfriend. She's the one that works at the front desk, who's really ditzy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm in favor of that. She can be the embodiment of Isis and nothing's an
And just the
asteroid.
fact that her name is Lucy.
What's the actress?
Yeah.
She's famous,
No,
right?
not really.
Oh no, I was thinking of the girl that works in the front of the police place.
Yeah.
Oh, that's her. Yeah.
Carol Kane?
No.
No,
she kind of looks like Carol Kane.
Oh,
but
it's a
no,
different
Kimmy
actress?
Robertson is
Oh,
the
really?
actress.
Oh, well, okay. Well, still, anyway, I like that character.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that kind of idea of her being like, she's sort of the scribe of all the affairs
Right.
that happens. So there's, and there is, there's that small bird in the back of the card, which could even be the.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the bird of Hermes that in the Tree of Knowledge, rather than it being the serpent, as in the original Garden of Eden, it's the bird of Hermes, making it Eden restored after the fall and the redemption. So
Yeah,
Except
so
it's going to be Waldo.
through the parent.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
So it's somehow it's going to be the front room of the police station, and yet outside with water.
I think so. Yeah, that was kind of one of the tricky things for like Norma's card was like blending the.
It was well done. It was well done.
Thank you. So hopefully something like that again for
For the star.
For the star. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
But I do have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So as I said, the devil's going to be Bob. And so in his
what about the
raised
two
hands-
characters? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Oh, that was going to be my question. Is the two characters in front? I keep bouncing back and forth between because in traditional they're kind of the parody of the lover's card,
Right.
but I don't think Bob has enough connection with Bobby and Shelley to really make that as strong as it could be.
Other than the
No.
name, I mean, it is kind of curious that he chose to give them both the same name.
Well, yeah, because there are two Bobs and there are two Mikes.
And one's Bobby.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a Michael and a.
There's Mike, the one-armed man, and then there's Mike,
So
who's
there is a
Bobby's
connection.
friend.
So
That's true.
If
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
case, is it Bobby and Laura or is it Bobby and Shelley?
Right? Yeah. So yeah, I was thinking like those two potentially, or
Oh, but you already
or
did
who?
Bobby and
Or
Shelley
who?
on the lovers
Yeah.
card.
Right. So yeah, so I was thinking also of maybe bringing in Leland again and Cooper because they're both the people that have been kind of under the dominion of Bob, and they're in the card. They're both chained to his like pedestal that's underneath his feet.
I was thinking actually maybe Chris Isaac's character and Teresa
And
Banks.
Kiefer Sutherland. Oh, Teresa Banks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Teresa
because what happened to Chris Isaac? What?
Yeah.
He just disappeared. Okay, so yeah, Teresa Banks and Chris Isaac. That's a good.
Yeah.
suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But
okay.
what about Kiefer Sutherland's character? He was sort of a
Right now,
fool,
I have him as the Page of Wands.
So
Okay,
good. Oh,
okay.
that's so good.
and then maybe having Chester Desmond as the Knight of Wands because
Okay.
they're both like a little bit lower ranking in like the world of the Blue Rose cases.
Right.
But those are still a little bit up for debate. But yeah.
Oh, and
yeah,
David
so-
Lynch shows up in
Yes.
in Firewalk
Yes.
with me. That'd be pretty
And
cool.
in the show.
Yeah.
Cooper,
yeah.
you remind me of a Mexican chihuahua.
Nice to see you, Chet. The cousin of your mother's uncle.
Anyone
So-
who hasn't seen the show is going to be so lost.
Yeah. Apologies to all the non-Twin Peaks watchers.
Yeah,
out there.
but just
They've probably
just
turned off by
just to
now.
break it down in a soundbite to everybody, the magician card with Dale Cooper is basically that's David Lynch's alter ego. Well, it's his true self, really. I'd say Dale Cooper is the true essence of David Lynch expressing itself artistically through Kyle MacLachlan. And even though David Lynch would disagree, I say the same thing about Dune.
Huh. Okay.
Exactly the same thing, in fact.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I
Just
guess-
had longer hair.
yeah.
Well, and he was selling out at the time. And so
Right.
was Paul. It's all. He didn't necessarily. Well, anyway, I'm not going to take a left turn into Dune.
Yeah.
What about the Dune Tarot, huh?
Right.
When are you going to finish this and do that?
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, no, I'm excited for the Devil card because whoever the two characters end up being, I'm in. How the Devil has his like right hand raised. I'm gonna have him like potentially like pulling flames out of whoever character it is below him.
Oh, okay.
And then
Okay.
the hand that's kind of pointed towards the ground is gonna be shooting out the blood. So it's sort of
the
blood
Garmonbosia.
Yeah, and then I think kind of on the ground below I might have a bowl of the creamed corn.
Now, who were the two people in that whole Garmonbosia scene? Was that Chris Isaak and Teresa Banks? And I mean, Chris Isaak, we mean the actual singer, Chris Isaak. Playing a role. He was Agent so-and-so. What was he?
Chester Desmond.
Oh, Chester Desmond. And then Teresa Banks was the girl who got killed before Laura by the same killer. I mean, we're totally like spoiling it for people who haven't seen it yet. But if they haven't seen it yet, come on, dude, you're 25 years behind. There's gonna be spoilers. You know.
It was Chris Isaacs, I believe.
So yeah, I could see that. I could see the Red Room. Definitely the devil being in the Red Room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then instead of like the devil's wings, there's going to be a kind of an owl behind him, kind of turning into the wings, and the horns that kind of make these circles behind the devil's face are going to sort of be taking the place of like the owl's eyes.
That's
just for that compositional relationship.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, that's like how the death card is like better than the Rider-Waite one. This is probably going to turn out being a similar. I mean, at least for people who are really into Twin Peaks, you know, there's the rest of the audience that are like, I really don't understand this episode.
Yeah.
Why are they talking about a television show? You know? Who's David Lynch? You know?
Well, it was the same thing when the show was on. I mean,
the
big thing there was everyone was just kind of like, wait, when are they going to solve the murder? I want them to solve the murder.
And it's like, well, everybody kind of already knows who the murderer is, but there's a lot more going on.
The murder's not important anymore, guys. It doesn't need to be resolved. Oh, wait, the network tells you it does? Okay, resolve it. Jeez.
Oh, just a fun David Lynch anecdote. I used to work at this theater, and I did this illustration of David Lynch for the cover of like our monthly like periodical that we release with the films that are coming out that month. And this illustration of David Lynch was on the cover. And this older person that came into the theater was like looking at it, and he's like, oh, is that David Lynch? And the person working there, she's like, oh yeah, that's David Lynch. And then the guy went on to say, he's like, oh, is that oh crap, what's the guy who has the all those like organic ranch dressings?
Paul Newman?
Wait, or is this Paul Newman? Is this Paul Newman or David Lynch? And the person working there was like, no, it's David Lynch. And the person was like, oh, what's a David Lynch? So yeah, there is this certain sense of some people they just don't know who it is. Yeah.
Well, I remember reading a review of Devo's first album when it came out, where it said, like, yeah, I hear that they get a lot of their ideas from Eraserhead, but who wants to actually watch Eraserhead to find out?
I'm originally from Iowa, and I went to school at the University of Iowa, which is in Iowa City, which is just it's not too far outside of Fairfield, Iowa, which is where that big center of transcendental meditation is.
Okay.
And the actor who plays Benjamin Horne, he lives in around that area, or he visits there quite often. And he came into the art store where I was working one time, and so I had a long conversation with him about acrylic painting because Benjamin Horne was getting into acrylic painting. So that was fun.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, more than a few now, I reconnected with one of my friends from high school, who he and I had both really been into the show, but about in the early 90s, we just kind of lost track of each other. And then, thanks to the miracle of the internet, we found each other again. And he invited me over for lunch, and he was like, and you will never guess who I am living with now and who is pregnant with my child. I was like, okay, who? And it turns out it was Sherilyn Fenn.
Wow.
So, so I got to meet her 7 months pregnant, but still smoking hot.
That's very serendipitous.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us on the Esoterinerd podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We'll definitely have to have you back on, especially when it's finished, and let people know how they can get it. And I'd like to see it go through U.S. Games, but I don't know if, well, we'll see.
Yeah. So that's something I hope that, when the deck's more complete and it's more of a complete thing, I could, approach the appropriate people with more of a, with everything in order and ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's less of like a middle of the road pitch and more of a, final destination kind of thing.
Right. Well, good luck. I mean, this is really amazing stuff again.
Yeah, and I want to all the people who are listening to this who are interested in the deck. I want to thank everybody for being so warm and supportive, and all the messages that I've gotten on Facebook have been they've honestly been they've been so nice and so humbling to get, because it's really inspired me to really get back into it and really work hard on this thing, because a lot of people have found resonance with it, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, it's it feels like really good to know that people are supportive, but on the other hand, you're like, oh God, I really can't let them down now.
Yeah. So it does add a certain degree of stress, but it also provides that nice kind of fire under your feet.
Right,
motivation, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's not just so much, myself creating this in the vacuum.
Yeah.
Now knowing that there are people out there who seem to be enjoying it quite well.
It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great chatting with you guys too.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys too. Have a good one.
Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much. It definitely went a lot better with you here than it would have gone just by myself.
Even I was scrabbling to remember what happened at the end of the series and in the movie. And I don't think he needed our help. I think he can do it fine.
Yeah,
really,
he's doing just fine on his own.
But yeah, thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
Absolutely.
And if you ever have another podcast that falls into my narrow skill set, I'd be proud to come back.
All right. Sounds good. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you to my old friend Richard. Thank you to my new friend Ben. Thank you to Angelo Badalamenti, composed the soundtrack to Twin Peaks, which you've heard twice. Audrey's dance at the beginning and Dance of the Dream Man at the end. Thank you to the monks at Jofuku Inn, the ones you heard chanting at the beginning, the ones you hear chanting now. Thank you to Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith. Special thanks to David Lynch. Special thanks to Kyle MacLachlan. Special thanks to you. Good night.